Chapter 14, Part 2, Mongrel. Out in the street, Roy said, "You know, this is a dog project when you think about it." And he said, "We could find out more about dogs than even the books know. You could interview him." Eric said, "Don't you call me a mongrel." On the way home, Eric and Roy arranged to go to the bank library after tea. There'd be dog books there all right, and no interference. When he arrived home and entered the kitchen, Eric found his mum sitting at the table reading a paper. "Seen my library ticket, Mum?" he said. Sitting room sideboard," said Mrs. Banks, without looking up. "Top drawer, right." Eric left the room and returned shortly after. Mrs. Banks continued to read. "What are you going to the library for?" "Dog books," said Eric, and immediately regretted his words. "Dog books?" Mrs. Banks lowered her paper and looked closely at Eric. He had the feeling she was trying to read him. She said, "Is Roy going?" "Yes," said Eric. "Is this weather to a library?" "In this weather to a library?" "Yes, it's a sort of a project." Mrs. Banks continued to scrutinise her son. She said. When they reached the library, Eric and Roy headed straight for the dog books in the children's section. "Here's a good one," said Roy, almost before he'd taken it from the shelf. "Wild dogs and working dogs." "I'm having this," said Eric. "A closer look at dogs." Roy said, "This one's got careers for dogs in it. Hey, we could find a job for you." "It says here," said Eric, "a St. Bernard is 100 times heavier than a Chihuahua." "I could have told you that," said Roy. Then he said, "You could be a guide dog or a guard dog." "The Greeks believed there was a dog with 3 heads," said Eric. "A gun dog," said Roy. Half an hour later, Eric and Roy emerged from the library and stood squinting in the bright sunlight. Each was carrying 3 books, the maximum allowed. Eric had one of his open. "It says here," he said. "Hello, miss," shouted Roy. Eric looked up just in time to see Mrs. Jessup go riding by on her bicycle. "Hello, boys." Mrs. Jessup, for her part, had time to notice the armful of books Eric and Roy were carrying and the library they were leaving. As she turned the corner, she felt a twinge of guilt. They really were doing a project. Eric and Roy watched her go, and then Eric said, "It says here, the dog is essentially an animal of the chase, enduring, patient, intelligent, and fleet of foot." He smiled and stuck out his chest. "That's me." And that's the end of the chapter. Let's have a look at the picture of Mrs. Jessup and the boys holding their library books. Alrighty.